Welcome to the Ex Good Girl podcast, the place where people pleasers, perfectionists, and overgivers come to unlearn the good girl rules that you thought were making you good, but now you can see are actually just keeping you small. If you've spent your life being unable to say no, putting everyone else's needs and feelings above your own, constantly seeking external approval, or avoiding conflict to make others feel comfortable, if guilt and resentment feel like a constant weight in your life, it is time to learn to knock that shit off. Every episode, we dive into the stories, skills, and strategies that you need to stop shrinking, start speaking up, and to live a life that is authentically and unapologetically yours, while also deepening the connection and vulnerability in the relationships that matter to you. I'm glad you're here. Let's jump in. Danielle Savory, I am so glad that we get to have this conversation.
Me too. I have been looking forward to it ever since you sent me the text. Like, let's do this.
What do you want people to know? I mean, everybody already knows who you are, but for those who are late to the game, Danielle Savory, sex coach, what do you want people to know about you?
You know, the thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is being a lifelong learner. And that is one of the things I have absolutely loved that has kept me involved in this work, is this constant striving to like understand. I mean, human psychology in general, I think you and I both geek out on all of the ways that we're socialized, how it impacts our nervous system, yada, yada. But specifically and really watching because it's presenting itself in such a different way, the impact that socialization has on the way that we show up with our sexuality, and really all of these avenues that we can find, especially those of us socialized as women, that are blocking us from feeling good, right? These messages that are saying like, let's get to the personal growth, but it's really just about surviving, like enough to get by so you don't feel awful. But we don't talk about like, once we get to ground zero, let's talk about feeling like ecstatic and alive and like turned on, and how despite all of the huge movements and progress we've made with sexuality and talking about mental load and people pleasing and all of these sorts of things, it's still kind of just getting us to like a level that should be a birthright to begin with, let alone like a level that is like of so much more joy. And there's just so many layers there. And so I think more than anything, like I'm just a lifelong scholar of this work and will continue just to show up in my own life because I'm my best subject test. And then, of course, in my clients and what I'm seeing in the world. So, yes, that's who I am.
Well, I have been the beneficiary of that lifelong learning and your obsession with women and pleasure and getting them into their bodies and into their bodies in a safe way, into their bodies in an intimate, vulnerable way. It has been, we've had a couple of conversations. And one of them we recorded podcast episode number 25, where you said something that has kind of been rolling around in my head ever since. And it has to do with the level of kind of self-intimacy and self-vulnerability that is required for a woman to really know what she wants in sexual experiences. And I realized at the time that I didn't think I had it. And that's there's a lot there that maybe we'll touch on today. But that really just has kind of been coming up and coming up and coming up. And I hear it in the experiences of so many women that I talk to, because not only are they having bad sex or having sex that isn't fulfilling, not having orgasms, not experiencing the type of like intimacy and connectedness that they want, but they're blaming themselves for it. Mm-hmm. They are putting up with it, right? And they're kind of thinking this is as good as it gets. Yeah. And they are experiencing kind of the slow decline or the die off of their sex lives as just something normal. Like this is what is supposed to happen as you age. You just experience less desire, and that's
Yeah.
just how it goes. And so that's kind of like the backdrop for everything that was on my mind when Hulu dropped Dying for Sex.
Mm.
And I'll say right now, if you're listening and you have not watched the show, don't listen to this if you're going to watch it, because we're going to talk about a lot of things that will spoil it for you, or listen to it and then watch it later, your choice. But if you decide to
But
watch it,
watch it. But watch
but
it.
watch it, and
Yes.
and I will say, make sure that you look up the themes and the subject matter so that you know what you will experience and see, because coming from a conservative religious
Mhm.
background, it's
Yeah.
not something I would have ever watched before. And I just want people to be prepared. But it has been like, few shows have affected me the way that Dying for Sex has affected me, because it talks about kind of all of these overlapping Venn diagrams of what should women be allowed to expect and ask for, and how do they get to the level of self-knowledge and vulnerability where they feel not just like they know what they want, but confident and able to ask for it. And then you overlap all of that with mortality and a
Yeah.
timeline. It just, what were your first impressions?
I mean, I had so many. The first thing that came to mind was the fact that it was presented as this like this urgency, right? Because of dying. I really loved that theme. And the reason is I've written about this before. I've talked to my clients about this before. But it's been one of the most powerful practices that I've taken from when I was deeply in like the Buddhist meditation world and doing a lot of like learning from that, which was basically like a death practice. And it's not for the faint of heart. And I think, especially in Western culture, we have such this fear, right, about death, about talking about death. Like it really is something that most people, just like sex, are very uncomfortable talking about. It's another taboo conversation, especially in the Western world and the way that we think about it. People are afraid of it. I was even trying to talk to one of my friends about this, and she was like, I can't even go there. Like, you know how I get triggered talking about death. Like, a lot of people have fear around death. You know, they don't want to think about their loved ones dying. But one of the things that allowed me to even start to explore like my own desires was a regular death practice where I go deep into meditation, and it's really uncomfortable. Like I'm not saying this is not for the faint of heart, but really imagining the people that I love passing away, and even or myself passing away, and what can be brought up somatically, emotionally, mentally is such a different perspective of gratitude, of absolute love, of maybe desire of like, wait, but if this is it, like, what does feel urgent? Like, what do I still want to explore? What do I want to say that I keep like week by week keeps going by and I'm not saying the thing? And it can bring that to a surface in a way that is felt, because again, you know, if we're in deep meditation or imagination, like your brain doesn't and body doesn't know the difference if this is real or not. Just like when you wake up from a dream and somebody has died, it feels very real. And so, you know, even beyond the sex stuff, I loved the conversation around death and all of the things that it brought up, but also how and why that brought up this urgency and this desire, and seeing kind of these things that don't match up in your life. Like, if I only have this much left, like these things don't align. And the fact that so many women don't actually ask those conversations or ask those questions of themselves until they're faced with like the ultimate end. And can we start asking these questions sooner? And sometimes a death practice can really bring that gratitude and appreciation, where you start to understand, you see the things that really do make a difference. And then you're like, oh, it's okay that you didn't pick up your shoes. Like, I'm not really going to care about that. later too. It's like the things that become trivial, but like this part is actually really important to me.
I felt so much of that. I mean, it just kind of sucks you in. You
Hmm.
are not allowed to look away from the Molly's death,
Yeah.
right? You are not allowed to look away. And you're not allowed to look away through the eyes of several characters who unflinchingly tell her the truth,
Yes.
right? The
Yeah.
truth about what is going to happen to her, the truth about the process that she is in, the truth about the limited time that she has left. It is, I mean, it on the one hand, pleasure and mortality seem like opposites, right?
Yeah.
Because pleasure is such a lived, embodied experience, and her body is failing, and you see it just, you know, in scene after scene where she is attempting pleasure and her body fails,
Yeah.
and she goes after something that she wants and her body fails. And it is such, it felt like kind of gut punch after gut punch. if
Yeah.
if I'm going to be honest, I wanted her to get better. I wanted there to be a scene where the doctor comes in and is like, you know what, actually, you're not dying, we
Your
fixed it.
pleasure, your orgasms like healed your
Yes,
cancer. I was like, is
right.
this coming? Because this is great.
Right, but the characters who unflinchingly tell her the truth are so moving and so meaningful, and I just wondered what your thoughts were about either those relationships or characters specifically.
Yeah, well, I also like that you just brought up before we pass over this point of like the pursuit of pleasure with
Mm,
obstacles, right?
yeah,
And
beautiful.
specifically with the obstacles of pain in the body, because for those of you that know my backstory, like that was me. And I think a lot of women, at some point in their life, that's what it feels like. It's like I want this, and I'm starting to get more courageous in the desire for it, but then like getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back because your body isn't cooperating the way that you want it to. And how pursuing pleasure despite these obstacles really is like coming back to our conversation about like intimacy with self is like such a testament to like standing firmly in the ground, like I'm worth this. Like I am worth it. Like I don't care how many times my body's like, no, 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 no. I want to meet it. I want to collaborate with it. I want to figure out a way that we can begin to move through these obstacles together. Not that I'm ignoring you and pretending this other stuff isn't happening, but how do we work together, me and my body and my soul and my heart, to create such a beautiful like connection of safety and trust and not abandonment, so that we can all, all meaning all of these parts of
Yeah,
ourselves, right?
yeah.
Experience like this ultimate level of like pleasure. And I think it was that continuous like a pursuit of it. And to be honest, at some points in that show, I thought that she was gonna stop, that
Yeah.
she was going to be like, well, I can't now, or I'm in too much pain now, or this isn't working. And
I'm in
actually,
hospice now.
yes, yes, and actually like quit on this mission. And I'm so happy that like till the very end, like this was still at the top of mind, because I think it's so easy, especially as viewers and those of us that have been socialized in this culture, to understand like what her husband was saying of like, but this isn't even important. Like we just need to spend time together. All these other ways that her desires to experience sexual pleasure were dismissed, and honestly are just kind of dismissed in society from, in general. Like her mother dismissed it, her doctor dismissed it, her husband dismissed it, all of these other voices that are like, but why is this the thing you're spending your last days on? Like, really, is this who you've become? That somehow that this pursuit of pleasure was so less worthy of her time and attention than just like connection with other people or conversations, or I don't even know what she would be doing, like just letting herself being babied by her husband, like that should be more appealing to her than an orgasm.
I'm so glad you brought us back to that point. We'll get to the characters who tell her the truth in a minute, because I think that this is important. She faces such judgment
Yeah.
around her choices, and I just want to name some of the cultural like narrative that still exists for women around our sexuality. Be desirable, have a body that's desirable, but don't have so much desire that you're a whore, right? That
Yeah.
you just want sex more than anything else, because that's disgusting and gross.
Yeah. Yeah. What's wrong with you? Kind
What's
of
wrong
like
with
thought.
you? What are
Yeah.
some of the other kind of cultural patriarchal bullshit that comes up for you when we're thinking just
Um,
about that?
well, I was just noticing like the way even her husband, right? Like there were so many things with her husband. Like, but one of the things was just like, but you're dying. Like
Yeah.
you need to be taken care of. Like basically like submit to the thing that I've decided you need more of than you knowing what you need. Right.
Yes.
That was such like a predominant thing throughout. But also because some of her sexcapades in this show weren't, I would say, as most people consider like traditional like avenues of exploration when it comes to pleasure. You could just see the eyes of like her family, when they're like bringing this like submissive into her hospital room, or how it was being talked about, or going to a sex party, like all of these ways that it's like, yeah, for sure, get yours, but only get yours in a way that we have deemed accessible and maybe a little daring, but not too daring.
It really speaks to who gets to have sex, who
Yeah,
gets to have sexual pleasure,
yeah,
right? Do sick bodies get to have sexual pleasure? Do bodies that look different, that have different capabilities and capacities, that there is such a narrative about who gets to have what type of sex based on what is going on with their body, either health wise or what it looks like, or who desires it and who doesn't. That's a
yeah.
big part of it.
Yeah. And I even noticed myself, even being, a lifelong learner and person of this work, questioning some of it too. Like, why does this one feel uncomfortable and this one doesn't? Right. Like, especially with her husband, I was like, yeah, go get out of there, get your thing, like that, like all wrong, right? But then when her best friend like threw this incredible party for her, I was like, and you're gonna go on like this other date? I was like, that's kind of shitty, like,
Yeah.
and why do I think it's shitty? And I still kind of landed on like I still thought it was shitty, but in a way that felt like there is still nuance.
Yeah.
And there is like these certain conversations and like where does it still like fit into like like my social okays or what I think is okay and acceptable, and also questioning like I'm still not sure if like that is coming from the people pleaser in me, or that's coming in like, but your friend really is doing a lot for you and she loves you, and that could be true intimacy in that moment versus like a quick dopamine hit of going on this date. So I do think that there was so much, and I love that it brought that kind of like, self-inquiry into my own mind.
Yeah. And I love that the show just let us experience that and grapple with it and didn't
Yeah,
make it clean and pretty. Like she chose her friend in that moment, which
yeah,
I think a lot of people watching it, I think I had the same reaction you did, like, oh, but she bought you the dresses and the hats and you're
yeah,
just gonna leave her.
yeah,
And I love that we just get to be left with that feeling because that's our judgment of it.
yeah,
And Molly is so singly focused on this goal of hers to
yeah,
have an orgasm with another person
yeah,
that it she knows, I think, that her friendship can handle that
yeah,
and that it will recover, because again, kind of coming back around to the characters who really tell her the truth
yeah.
in a lot of different ways, right? There's medical professionals who are really truthful with her in such beautiful ways. But what let's dive into the friend for a little bit. I forget her name. Do you remember
Yeah.
her name?
I don't remember her name. But yeah, I mean the friend, oh my gosh, I just loved her so much. And I loved how she was also unapologetic in explaining, her best friend's desires. Like, okay, I'm here, I'm with you. Like, you want to leave your husband, you want to go get your, like, let's do this. Even though like she was, showed up fully in support, like, let's do this, without maybe fully realizing like what that meant. But the way she also just like kept standing up for her friend with this pursuit and supporting her, whether it was to her boyfriend, or I think it was her sister, or to the doctor in the room, like, it was like, I am here and I am your advocate. And I also love not just that she was such an advocate and right there with her, but she created such a safe space for her friend to have this desire, to be able to express it, to share with her how it was going, to share with her what was going on. And I think that still in this society, we really have a hard time doing that with our friends. Like, this is still so taboo in so many ways, that even with your friends, like, you're not necessarily going to be like, I'm having horrible sex. Or like when she
Yeah.
first told her best friend she had never had an orgasm with her husband, like these kind of things, because they feel so shameful, let alone the desires feeling shameful. Like, the reality of certain situations feel really shameful. We barely even want to say that sentence to ourselves because what we make it mean, let alone having conversations with people we trust. And not saying you need to be having friends that you talk to about everything, but like having open conversations with somebody like about
Yeah.
this that allows you to actually see it.
That also just kind of points back to cultural and patriarchal conditioning.
Yeah.
This idea that the biggest relationship, the most important relationship should be to our partner, that they complete us, that they should know everything about us, that they know how to meet all our needs. And if they don't, there's something wrong. But I think Nikki, I remembered her name, Nikki,
Yes.
the beauty of her being in the way she is in Molly's life is that she is able to just hold the truth of who Molly is and what is happening to her without the judgment that comes
Yeah.
at her from so many different people in that show. And she just can witness and hold it. And she offers her something that that most important relationship, her husband, right, couldn't offer her.
Yes. Yes. Like, the non-judgment there is such a big piece, because I think even when it comes to close friends, that's not a guarantee either. Like,
Right.
there's very few spaces where it really can. I mean, you and I are both coaches, right? And so it's kind of our job to hold space for like non-judgmental, like observation, awareness, like curiosity. But outside of like the professional realm, not very many people have somebody they can trust to open up to feel safe in their nervous system with, and to not automatically feel like they're going to be judged for what they share.
It's so that's such a good point. And so if you're listening to this and you're thinking about, do I have a friend that I could begin to talk about this with? Maybe you do. So
Yeah.
Danielle, if someone is listening and wondering if like, do I have a friend like Nikki? Do I have someone who could witness or um, help me better understand myself without judgment? How might they open up that conversation?
Yeah, well, I think it's the first thing is we just want to take a moment to meet ourselves, because I know that if I were to ask myself that question or realize I didn't have a person like that in my life, my immediate place would be, my brain's default is like self-rejection, right? Like,
Mhm.
I can't believe I don't have somebody in my life like that. And before, for any of you listening that are like me, that's the first place you go, like, there I am again doing it wrong, or I don't even have, or like this place of like lack or self-deprecation, is to start with like, of course, like, it's okay. Like, I see you. Now you've just identified something you want. Like, every time we notice there might be this thing that we don't have, like, instead of just thinking, oh, it's I don't have, it's like, oh my gosh, like that does, like, okay, like that might hurt a little bit. Like it makes sense. And now you know you want to have that kind of relationship with somebody. Now you know you want to like open up to the universe to bring this person in, or for you to maybe start having conversation with somebody you already know and trust, and then navigating whether or not they might be that person. And so coming back to like whether or not they are your person, is you can ask, right? You can ask like, hey, these are some things that I've really been exploring in my own mind. These are some things that are really interesting to me. Like, are you open to having conversation about this? Like, how would you feel if we talked about this, and just asking kind of upfront is how I think that I would do that with one of my friends. The other thing that I have just gotten feedback on, because I always have been very comfortable with this topic, is you present your own comfortability, even if maybe you're not really that comfortable with it yet. Like, what are you comfortable? And just being that person that owns it and says it, because right then and there, like when I started like making like, these kind of funny jokes about, like, I called them pity titties, like after I like breastfed and my boobs just started like falling into my armpits. I was like, you know what I'm talking about, like pity titties. Like the amount of shock on a lot of women's face, like, oh my God, like, are you really saying that? But then the other people, they're like, yeah. And then they just started saying the same thing. I was like, you're my people. So if you're kind of like out there and daring, like I am in these certain social situations, you can also kind of test the waters by, first creating own safety. I've got my own back, knowing how you're going to go home and your brain is going to be like, did you say too much? Did you ostracize yourself? Like, are you that, are you that person? And be like, no matter what, this is what I'm still going to believe about myself. But you can practice, especially in other newer situations where people are around, just going outside of like the normal topics, like being a little bit of an overshare, sharing a couple of things, and then seeing how it lands. Because right away, you'll kind of get a feel of somebody like leaning in or joking or giving you a look, or like the energy will be there. It's like, I could probably talk to them more about this. They weren't
Yes.
afraid.
Yes. The times when I have spoken up, almost universally, it's been like, oh my God, me too. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm wondering the same thing. I've never done that either. I have some questions too. And especially among, friendships where there is, some existing emotional connection, right?
Yeah.
There's some existing infrastructure where you have been sharing and talking about your lives. I think that's a really great place to open up this conversation, because here is what I know. We have been kind of tricked into really siloed lives, right? It's like
Mhm.
me in my house with my family, my husband, and we need other women. We need their stories. We need their experiences. We need their wisdom. We need their mistakes, their vulnerability, their words, in a way that I don't think I fully appreciated until very recently. Like,
Yeah.
I have so many good men in my life, and there are very few men that I allow now to teach me anything or talk to me. I'm I'm done with
Yeah.
men telling me
Yeah.
things, right? Because that's been my whole life. I want women's voices, and Nikki is one of those. The beautiful way that she just opens her whole life up. And in some ways, I was like, girl, are you like destroying your own life for Molly? And she's like, yes, I am. And I love her. I can't not do it. And so everybody gets to watch and kind of make their own, judgments about
Yeah.
the dynamics in that relationship. But what I know is that we need the voices of other women, and we heal best in settings with other women. So many of the wounds that we don't even know are there. And so I just love this aspect of our conversation.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that you're saying that about like the women because I think it is being witnessed in it, but then also it's just that, I've always seen this like in my group coaching programs or like my
Hmm.
workshops that I do where it's like multiple women is the minute a woman asks a question or the minute she shares something, you feel like a collective sigh of relief or like actually see their shoulders drop away from their ears because in
Yeah,
that moment what you're witnessing is actually a test of self-compassion is actually like this beautiful moment of prescribed self-compassion because that is a moment a woman realizes she's not alone
that's right.
and being like seen it through somebody else's story through their question through their sharing and that all of a sudden for the first time you're like wait, it's not just me or I'm
Hmm.
not broken. It's such this like visceral sigh of relief and like this safety to your nervous system that really does give you permission to continue to explore like these conversations. But I think that really does happen so much in community and, historically speaking, in so many different ways. Um, that we just don't experience as much now. Not to say that a lot of the gatherings in the 50s were definitely not without judgment, but there was still like these like regular gatherings like my Grammy used to get together and play bridge all the time. She was part of like a quilt club. I mean I still do think we have like book clubs and that kind of thing, but these actual purposeful like gatherings where even though you might be like stitching you are sharing or something comes up or like a piece of advice like these like containers that allow us to witness one another learn from one another and then walk away usually with a little bit of self-compassion.
Yeah, so important. One of the things that really struck me was the grief that Molly felt around never having had an orgasm with another person.
Yes.
Orgasms are fraught things for many women because of our programming about how they're supposed to happen, what they're
Yeah.
supposed to look like, what you're supposed to do to get one, what's wrong with you if you don't have one. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, I have so many. We could talk about this for like 6 hours, but really, I do think that the main thing comes back to judgment. Judgment, like you said, of how it's supposed to look, what is okay, what isn't okay, and a willingness to move into discomfort. Like that's the other really big part. One of the things that I notice even in myself and also in my clients is what I call it's a first thought, right? It's like that first like default thought you have in response to something. And usually most of us see that first thought and it's truth, right? It's like if your partner brings something up and maybe you've like it feels like outside of your comfort zone normally and your first thought is like yuck. Like why do they want that? Or like really? That's what you want? Or like this immediate judgment or that creates this stuckness and creates us actually from pursuing these further because we assume that first thought that comes from our subconscious mind, our default thinking that has been wired and programmed in is like our instinct or likely like what we actually want versus it just being like, oh no, this is just the programmed response. And so I think when it comes to like, that's where the judgment usually happens. And so it doesn't create a safe space for us to even question, for us to even explore further, because usually we shut down so many of like our desires or what we want with immediate, like what we've been told is okay or what we've been told it should look like. And then we make it about us. And on top of that, the nervous system response really makes it hard to move past this place of feeling triggered in your body to being curious and this potential for pleasure. So, understanding kind of like the mechanisms at play, I think are so important because we can see them, right? Like you can see it. Like I can see in my brain throws out a first thought. I'm like, okay, that's my first thought, but what is my intention? Like, what do I actually think? And then noticing how often that first thought already triggers my nervous system. So if I am going to get further, even if it's just a place of self-inquiry, or if it's like physically, I'm going to explore something, like knowing how to again collaborate with your body and your nervous system to create enough safety so that you're willing. And this doesn't mean that you just are totally relaxed. I think that's the other thing a lot of people misunderstand about when it comes to going after sexual desire. Like a lot of times you are going to feel a little bit activated. That isn't a bad thing because we want a little bit of that activation because that is the thing that creates the butterflies. That's the thing that creates more arousal. Like that actually could be the thing that turns you on, and it doesn't have to be a complete shutdown. So that was kind of a roundabout answer, but I think I got to what you were asking.
Yeah. And I love that the show let us see that, right? Her
Yeah.
activation, her nervousness,
Yeah.
her and just the idea of first thoughts. I think that's so brilliant because we aren't even responsible for a lot of those first thoughts, right?
They're not ours
They
usually.
were taught to us, right?
Yeah.
Mormonism, the religious background that I come from, it's a whole lot of don'ts. There's a
Yeah.
whole list of sexual don'ts. Do not, don't even think about it. You're bad if you're thinking about this.
Yeah.
Shame and repression, and then all of a sudden you get married and now it's okay. And
Yeah.
so it's but it's only okay up to a certain point. Only certain things are okay. So
Right. Right.
those first thoughts aren't even yours all the time. And I kind of the metaphor that I have for me right now in this area of sexual exploration in my own life is I have a box, this metaphorical box of all these things that I was told, no, never, don't even think about it. And I'm taking the box out and I'm just putting everything on the table and I'm just looking at it from a
Yeah.
place of curiosity and neutrality. It's not good or bad. Like I let
Mhm.
somebody else tell me this was good, that's bad, this is good, that's bad. That person is gone, right?
Yeah.
All the men are gone. And if something's going to be off the table, I want to take it off for reasons that I like, right?
Yeah.
For reasons that make sense for me, for my relationship with my husband, but I'm not going to let someone else tell me that that's good or bad. But that doesn't mean that the first thoughts aren't still there, right?
Yeah.
When
Yeah. They always
I'm
are.
looking at the content of my box, right?
No pun intended.
No pun
Um,
intended. I didn't even catch that. Thank you. Thank you, sex coach
um,
Danielle.
you're welcome. You can count on me for those sexual innuendo jokes. Like the other thing I love that you're like, we can just assume the other metaphor that I love to work with, and this is really helpful when it comes to first thoughts, is imagining yourself at a bus station and like bus number 5 takes you to like the part of town that you don't like. Like you don't feel good there. It shuts you down. You feel kind of like on edge, all of this sort of thing. And like you've gone on bus 5 enough that you're like, this doesn't ever take me to where I want to go. But you're like, but bus 25 does. And you're standing at a bus station because what happens at bus stations? Buses come and bus 5 shows up and you're just pissed. You're like, why is bus 5 here again? Like, bus 5 shouldn't be here. I decided I didn't even want bus 5. And it's like, no, we can just assume bus 5, bus 4, bus 3, bus 2, bus 1, the one that you first bussed on when you were a kid, is always going to come through the bus station. We don't need to make it a big deal. We just remember, like, oh, of course it is. Like, there's that bus. I am at a bus station. It's like, that's my brain. Of course it's going to come up. Of course these thoughts are going to come up. And I'm practicing remembering what bus I am wanting to get on because that is the one that takes me to my destination. And then also having grace, like sometimes you're like scrolling your phone, you're not paying attention. You get on bus 5, you're wondering why it stinks, your legs are sticking to the seat, like everything's uncomfortable. And you're like, oh shit, it's because I'm on bus 5 again. Ding, ding, ding. Just get off the bus, go to the station and wait for bus 25 again.
Love, love.
Yeah.
Molly's exploration is pretty radical, right? And
Yeah.
it's driven by her timeline, right? The
Hmm.
the mortality aspect of the show. And I know that there are a lot of women. I talk to them, they're my clients, they're my friends who are wondering, like, is this it for sex for me? Like sex isn't like bad or terrible necessarily, maybe in some cases it is, but what if I want something more?
Hmm.
And I'm not necessarily dealing with the mortality timeline that Molly was, but what does a sexual relationship with yourself look like?
Hmm.
And if a lot of women listening to this, my clients, your clients, women who are interested in a greater degree of self knowledge, right? Maybe beyond masturbation or just knowing what their, sexual desires are. Where do they begin? Molly's exploration was pretty radical, right? With
Yeah.
her mortality timeline. And I can understand a lot of people not being comfortable or ready for that and not needing to because they're not dying of cancer. Um, but we all are dying, right?
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
it's there is
Different
there
timeline.
is a timeline. We're on different timelines, but just I'm interested in your thoughts there.
Yeah, and I've asked myself this question and I will continue to ask it. And for me, one of the places that I think is just really healthy to start is um, reading, like actually kind of like what's out there. And I don't mean like reading and just finding out like, oh, you could use a butt plug or there's these kind of vibrators. Like, great, do that. But I have found just fun, like even in romance novels or smut or, you know,
Yes.
audios, like audio, I don't even know what they're called, like erotic audio, like erotica.
Is one app that's been recommended to me by
Yes.
Maggie and Melissa. You know who they are.
Yes, yes. So, listening to this kind of stuff, you'll start to notice like, oh, that gives me a little bit of tingles, or I kind of like that. Or maybe like you don't like that, right? So even just exposing yourself, and I personally have found it to be more beneficial when I explore this when it is in story, where I have some identification maybe with like the character or something like that versus just like, oh, there's this act you can do, or you could do this position. Like that to me doesn't really give me much insight of like, that sounds hot or that feels good
Mhm.
because you're just looking at it more from this like mechanical sort of view. So for me, like seeing context does help, and seeing or hearing context, reading context has kind of helped. But the thing that has even resonated with me more than the acts, and the acts might come, is the tone. So I like to think of like the tone of an experience that I'm wanting to have, knowing that if
Mhm.
you start to pursue a particular tone, and there might be more than one tone, right? Like there's certain times in my cycle where I might want more like wild or like raw or like animalistic or like kind of like a dominating sort of tone or a submissive sort of tone. And then there might be other times where emotionally I feel a little bit more vulnerable and tender, and it's more like a tone of romance or just like care and appreciation. So I think more than just exploring what's out there as far as toys, acts, things to do is start to feel like, as I'm listening to these stories, like what is the tone of it? Like what is that kind of like the ambiance of this experience, and trusting that if you lean into, I want it to feel more like this, that can help a conversation with yourself and also with your partner about maybe it's just how you're acting, who you're being, what you're thinking about. But there also could be some things that you want to bring in that kind of color and like fill out that experience a little bit more.
I love that idea of tone. That's such a really interesting way to look at that. I also know that there are people who are listening who are going to be like, okay, so I can listen to some smut,
Yeah,
check, check.
yeah,
I know the tone,
yeah,
but to ask is so vulnerable. Like, how do I build the structure around being able to ask for something? Because one of the scenes that was so poignant to me that I really identified with, Molly is tied up in the back of what is it, Pottery Barn? We don't even know.
yeah,
So the character who's playing the Dom wants her to ask for something,
yeah,
and she just is struggling. And I think in that scene, it's because she doesn't know yet what she wants, but she finally gets out like one little thing that she wants. But I also have experience and think just the vulnerability of asking for something with all of that social programming about, you know, be a woman who is desirable, but don't have this wild desire of your own.
yeah.
What what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think number one is just acknowledging that, right? How vulnerable, AKA scary,
Yeah.
it actually is. And starting there, like, oh, like, of course, this is scary. Like, of course, this makes you nervous. Of course, your heart is like pitter pattering. Like, this is kind of like uncharted territory. You haven't had this represented. Like, that's the other thing to really understand is like, we haven't actually seen representation of very many women asking for what they want, especially in the vulnerable context of sexuality and pleasure. And so that acknowledgement alone offers such a balm to your nervous system to just kind of calm down and make it not something you're doing wrong, but also making the fear not wrong, that this is something that is a little bit scary and how can I meet myself? And sometimes that is a lot of the work before you even ask. And then the other thing that I have, worked with my clients is first, like starting to identify on your own and noticing the moments you do want to ask and you don't. And starting to see like, why didn't I? Just without judgment again, and just this curiosity, like what was I afraid of in that moment? Because sometimes it's, I mean, usually vulnerability, it's like a fear of rejection. We're afraid that the thing that we want to do is going to be rejected. The
Mhm.
idea that we have might be yucked, that we are going to feel ostracized, that it's going to create distance between our partner and ourselves, that they're not going to like us, that they're going to think we're dirty or wrong for asking. And so when you start to identify those, then you really can see the holes that need to be met and the healing and the safety that you need to create around those beliefs or those fears that you've identified. And I also like to just make it, instead of just being like, I'm going to just say what I want, you can also bring in a collaborative conversation. And I would recommend, because we're already vulnerable when we're naked and we're doing it, so maybe not during, but
Mhm.
another time, like, hey, like, and just be honest, like this makes me a little nervous, but like I'd love to have a conversation about sex. Like when would be a good time? Or I want to just, I'm thinking more about this, like as we continue into this next chapter of our life, and then having a kind of conversation where you're like, ask both of you, like, what is something you've always wanted to try? Or what is something you've always fantasized about, like and be clear, because it's also might be hard for you to hear something that your partner is bringing up. And so allowing like both of it, like this is safe, but we can just bring like one thing up or one thing that we've thought about. And that can start to just kind of get the ball rolling. But I think more important than anything is like, how can I create safety with myself? How can I create a strategy? Like if your fear is like they're gonna say blah blah blah, like create a strategy ahead of time of how you're going to meet yourself and be on your own side no matter what. That for me has helped so much with these kind of conversations, is because you want to just like have them respond great, right? Of course we all do, but we don't know. And so that's what vulnerability is. You don't know. And so really like having a strategy, how I'm going to create safety ahead of time, creating safety in the conversation, and then a strategy for afterwards. What are you going to say to yourself? Not like, see, I told you you shouldn't have said that. Now you're abandoning you again, right? That's why I think that this is such a practice of like true self intimacy, because not only are you being vulnerable with somebody else, you're being vulnerable and honest with yourself, but you have to have that back end part of like, I am going to be there for you no matter what.
I love that. And I'll just put in a plug, my never ending crusade to have women check their hormones and see if HRT, hormone
Yeah.
replacement therapy, is something. You also have to have the hormonal support
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be able to enjoy and explore. And I think, again, kind of circling back to programming, we have such stories about how our sexuality is supposed to just kind of wane and go away as we get older. But I know so many women in perimenopause and menopause are having the best sex of their lives
Yes.
because they have created this kind of not just safety structure and vulnerability structure, but they also are getting the health support that they need. And that's something you talked about with your doctor, right? To be able to really enjoy pleasure in ways that they never thought was possible, well into, 60s, 70s,
Yeah.
80s. And God, that's what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to say this caveat because I hear, from being out there, it's like we always, all of us naturally, this isn't judgment on anybody, want a quick fix. And from working with so many clients going through perimenopause and menopause and witnessing their journey with pleasure, the hormones, knowing like that they can help, right? But like that doesn't cure your programming. Like
Right. Yeah.
and so that like this is
Good
like
point.
one piece of the puzzle, because if you've never brought up to the surface, why am I resisting pleasure? If you've never brought up to the surface, like, why am I not feeling connection with my husband? Why you don't feel safe being vulnerable? Why you've never explored your own desires? I don't care how much HRT you do, you're still going to come up short. And that is something that's not being said in this hormone conversation that I really want to make an important point of, because I've seen so many women hoping like this is it, this is going to fix my libido, and not that it can't make a difference. It can. I have like experienced it on my own, but I've also done a lot of like this work where it was like it wasn't bad before. Like that's the thing, is we're like, yeah, I want that. It must be my hormones. But if you look even before you were in perimenopause, like you probably weren't exploring pleasure or exploring your desires or even what you knew ahead of time. Hormones doesn't do that. And I see so many women really like doubling down on the belief I am broken, because now they've gone to the hormone replacement therapy and things still aren't shifting the way that they want. And that's because there's this subconscious stuff, there's our nervous system work, there's communication that needs to happen with yourself and your partner still in order to actually pursue pleasure.
That is such a great point. Thank you for making that. Hormones will not do that work for you.
Yes, they're great. They can really help in
Yes,
so many
yes.
things. And
But
I am
they are
100% with you.
essential. Yeah.
Every single woman should go and take a look at this. And, it's not the only thing. Just like diet isn't the only thing to feel healthy and fit, right? Like there's so many other elements.
I've loved this conversation. Is there anything that you haven't gotten to say that you really wanted to make sure you put into words? I mean, I know we could talk for another 6 hours.
Um, the only thing that I think that I just want to come back to that we briefly mentioned and just kind of like a takeaway is um the the thing that you're going to see in this show over and over and over is the struggle for her to be able to orgasm when with somebody else versus just with herself, right? And I just want to like normalize it in the way that like if that's you and that's what you're experiencing, like that isn't you're not broken. Again, like coming back to like, that's totally understandable and it's okay. And it is because we have created enough safety for ourselves to explore our pleasure and our desire. And we don't have to be as vulnerable when it's just with ourselves, where that piece of vulnerability and intimacy does come into play with another person. And so if that is you and you're listening to this, like, welcome to the club, totally normal. And this is where we get to, have the opportunity to kind of move into the more challenging side of things sometimes, which is being vulnerable and moving through that discomfort and creating the safety of that vulnerability.
Thank you, Danielle. That was right on. I'm so grateful for you and for the conversations we have had that have been really important for me. If people want to find you, find out more about your work and what you do, where should they go?
Yeah, you can go to my website, daniellesavory.com. I'm on Instagram at danielle.savory. I'm trying to start on TikTok. I don't even know my handle on there, but you could probably just put in my name and you'll recognize me. And then other than that, even though I'm not currently recording new episodes, It's My Pleasure is a 200 episode library of like pure knowledge about all of this stuff when it comes to sexuality, pleasure, and so many of our obstacles.
Thanks again. Love you, friend.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening. If this podcast has been helpful to you, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a 5-star rating in whatever platform you listen to your podcasts. And if you go to my website, sarahfisk.coach, you can sign up there to receive my emails. Right now, I'm taking private one-to-one clients who want my help speeding up this work in their own lives. I really hope to provide a lot of free information on my website and in my podcast for people to do this work on their own. But if you're interested in having a coach like me to help you implement these things faster, to find the blind spots and obstacles that you're not aware of, go to my website and sign up for a consult. That's a time when you and I can get on Zoom and talk about the particulars of your situation, and I can show you how I could be helpful. The second thing you can do on my website is sign up for a freebie that I have called Difficult Conversations. Having a conversation that seems like it's going to be hard or difficult is one of the things that people pleasers struggle with. And so I've created a whole guide for you to be able to do that with some more confidence. That will also get you signed up for information about my group program, Stop People Pleasing. It's a group coaching program where you join a community of women just like you who are struggling to overcome perfectionating and people pleasing, and we do it together in a group. It's a really amazing opportunity to not just learn from your own experience, but just to see how similar you are to so many other women out there. The healing and the challenging and the laughing and the growth that happens in that beautiful community of women is really amazing. And if it's interesting to you, I would love for you to know about it.